I'm Scott Munn along with Tug Cowart in the Warrior Alliance Network studios in Atlanta, Georgia. Today, the spotlight is on the Marcus Foundation, one of the nation's top philanthropic leaders in military and veteran support. And we're honored to welcome Mr. Marcus Ruzek, a former Green Beret and now Senior Program Director at the Marcus Foundation. A combat veteran, Mr. Ruzek served 13 years as an Army officer, and now for the last 11 years, he's led the Marcus Foundation's military initiatives, carrying out the vision of Home Depot co-founder Bernie Marcus. His work focuses on veteran support, national security, foreign policy, and free market ideals, all things that we love here at the Warrior Alliance Network. Marcus Ruzek, thank you for your service both in uniform and through the Marcus Foundation, and welcome, sir, to the Warrior Alliance Network.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here, guys.
Man, I don't know that there's a name more synonymous with Atlanta than Bernie Marcus. I mean, there's a bunch of great names that are tied to the city of Atlanta, but Bernie's, he's one of the most special, one of the most important. How did you come to lead his veteran initiative?
Yeah, it's divine intervention is the only way I can describe it. I've been honored to do that and to work. I was able to work for about a decade and a half at Bernie's side to kind of build a veteran portfolio. For me, I grew up in Gwinnett County. I'm kind of Metro Atlanta kid. Was a high school kid on 9/11 and wanted to be G.I. Joe. That was definitely what I always wanted to do.
Yo, Joe,
and,
let's go.
So, once 9/11 happens, there's no way that I was going to do anything else. I mean, at 17, I had recruiters in the dining room trying to talk my parents into letting me out of school early, to leave a year early and go to basic training. Thankfully, they didn't. But I enlisted right out of high school. The Army, kind of set me up at Georgia Military College. I was able to go through a 2-year commissioning program there, become an officer, serve in the infantry, and then later go to selection and serve as a special forces officer. So the way I came to the Marcus Foundation, my first son was born at Fort Bragg in 2011. 2013. And when we were, after he was born, you kind of get this sense. My wife and I were like, I think we want to go back home, go to Georgia. First we were like, we'll go live anywhere, and then all of a sudden you have a kid and you want to go home. So we said, let's transition into the reservist, in the 20th Special Forces Group, which is in the National Guard. It was an incredible opportunity. And let's go home to Georgia and I'll get a real job. That's kind of the way I thought. So I reached out to my network, which was really no one. Luckily I had a mentor of mine, retired 2-star general now, Major General Matt Smith, who's a great guy. And General Smith had kind of followed me and mentored me from battalion all the way through. He was my battalion commander in Afghanistan in 2009. And I reached out to him and said, hey, I need to get a real job. Can you help me meet some people? And he said, send me your resume. And so I sent it over. He's like, what the heck is this? Didn't know how to write one, didn't know what I was doing. So he actually hooked me up with kind of one of his friends who was in corporate America, and she offered her time to help me write one. And he had married into an affluent Atlanta family that was in similar circles with Bernie and the foundation. And at this time, this is about 2014, Bernie wanted to hire a veteran and begin a focused military and veteran initiative. And so the board said, who do we know in the Army? And Matt Smith's name came up. So he said, what do you think about this job? And I said, well, I think it sounds great. Frankly, I can't spell philanthropy, but maybe I can learn,
That's right.
And he said, well, frankly, you're probably not going to get this job. I'm also recommending some other people, but if you get an interview, it'll be a good start, right? So I got the interview. Then I interviewed with Bernie, and it was the oddest interview experience I had.
Well, hang on. You can't leave us hanging on. How come?
I'd been interviewing with a lot of people, right? A lot of different corporations. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I think I was pretty far down the road, likely accepting a job with a consulting firm and going to go down that route. So I'm like thinking, okay, you sit down, you get you get about a minute and a half. Tell me about yourself is how it will start. I sit there, I'm looking at Bernie, and he looks at my resume and he goes, oh, you're a Green Beret. can you kick my ass?
No, sir. The answer is no, sir. Okay. The answer truly is yes. The answer is no, sir.
Exactly. What did you say?
Yeah. So I said, well, Bernie, I only weigh about 170 pounds, but the Army taught me how to use it well. And he said, okay, well, if I need you to go kick somebody's ass for me, can you do that? And I said, yeah, whatever you need.
What kind of job am I signing up for exactly?
Right. So totally on my heels. But that's Bernie, right? Like that is Bernie. He's direct. He cuts to the chase.
Love that.
No fluff. He didn't care, necessarily what the accolades are or what your education is. He just wants to know, does this person have grit? Are they a fighter? Are they going to help me? Are they going to be on the team? And so,
God, I love that.
I think that being young, he visioned me. He saw me maybe as trainable. And so he took a chance on me, and thank God he did. Bernie took a chance on me. The president of the foundation, Jay Kamen, who's still there today, my boss today, they both took a chance on me and said, let's see if the kid can figure it out. So.
Gosh, man, what a great story. I know you're very proud of it. Bernie Marcus, the legendary founder of Home Depot, passed away at 95 in November of 2024, November 4th, 2024. He's known around the world, not just for entrepreneurship, but incredible philanthropy. Now that you know how to spell it, and we all know how to spell it. I only know how to spell it because Scott wrote it down here. But an advocate for free enterprise, too.
Yeah.
So you gave this great description of what it was like to meet him and how he wanted to know that you had that grit, that you could follow the order and get the job done. What was it like to work with him? So I got a snapshot of the first impression.
Sure.
Now put me in the situations that you found yourself in with Bernie.
Yeah, I mean, the first year I think was quite unique because he's taken somebody who doesn't know how to do this. And so I'll explain a bit of the first year. Bernie, to start with, Bernie is not a typical philanthropist. There's a lot of people who are philanthropists that just write checks and give a lot of money to universities and hospitals and call it good.
Which is great.
It's wonderful.
But there's a difference in a guy that gets his hands dirty with it.
That's right. Bernie, we call it entrepreneurial philanthropy. And so Bernie basically took the same skills that built the Home Depot, and he said, I'm going to apply this now to my philanthropy. When he left the Home Depot in 2002, and he didn't have other business interests, he said, I'm full-time going to be focused on my foundation and changing the world. And so the whole first year was me spending a lot of time with Bernie, getting to understand him, getting to understand how he built Home Depot, and really focusing on what he'd already accomplished in his philanthropy, right? So he sent me around the city first, the country later, eventually all the way to Israel, where he's invested in a lot of different causes. And the blueprint is somewhat the same, right? Whether it's autism. So, in the late 80s, early 90s, Bernie had an associate who had a child with autism. Nobody knew what autism was. And Bernie recognized this problem, saw this family struggling, started to reach out, found a really great specialist and expert that was at Johns Hopkins, helped recruit him down to Emory, pushed a couple trailers together, and they founded the Marcus Autism Center. Well, started seeing patients and seeing kids and realizing nobody knows about autism. No federal dollars go to research here. We got to solve this problem. We got to get our hands dirty, and we really got to do it at scale. Bernie then met Bob and Suzanne Wright, who he was running, I think it's NBC at the time. And he said, and they were also touched by a child with autism in their family. And he said, the world needs to know what autism is. We need to start an advocacy organization. And so they said, well, Bernie, we really can't do it. It'll cost too much money. He's like, well, how much money? And they said, we'd need $25 million for the first 5 years just to get it underway. And he said, the check's in the mail, go. And Autism Speaks was born, right? And now the world knows what autism is, and dollars go to research. And the Marcus Autism Center today treats more kids with autism than any other center in the country. So that's the blueprint. That's how Bernie gets his hands dirty in a problem and goes to solving it. And that was no different. That was what he wanted to do with veterans. So he taught me how he did it in other areas, and then we started doing it with veteran issues.
I tell you, man, there's so many stories that I bet makes you smile when you reflect on them. Yeah. Is there one personal story that you have that you're willing to share or can share that will tell people why you love Bernie and why you followed him so closely?
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many. I hear his voice just constantly, and thankfully we have his voice in some unique ways. He really spent the last 20 years preparing us for the next 20. And so I'm able to reflect back on the time that I spent with him. And I'll tell one story. I was kind of giving him an update. Oftentimes we would just schedule regular time together, and he'd say, "Come down and bring me up to date on all the projects we're working on." And so I'm bringing him up to date. And just like anybody, when they talk to their boss, right, you want to tell them the good things. You want to tell, "Hey, Bernie, you invested in this, and look at this.
Here's
solutions.
what we've done.
Here's some great stories, right?" And that's what Bernie always focused on. It didn't matter. He needed to know the numbers and the figures and the stats and the budgets. But Bernie connected on a human level, and he wanted to hear the story. He wanted ROI on everything that we did, but the ROI was not financial.
It was human capital.
It was impact on people's lives, saving and changing lives. That's what we were about. So I'm down giving him an update in Florida at his house, and just kind of telling him, "Hey, this project's going really well," and he just starts waving his hand, and he says, "Just cut the
BS.
Cut the BS, Marcus." And he's like, "What's the problem?" And that really immediately spoke to me.
It probably put you back on your heels.
It
did. Were you prepared for it? Did you have the problem in the back of your head, or did you have to?
We're always working a problem or two, right? And so he knows that, right? I mean, this is a guy
he's a businessman.
He's a businessman, and so what he wants to know, he doesn't just want to be told things are going great and your investment's doing well. He wants to be told, "Where's the problem so that I can help you solve it?" And a lot of people will approach Bernie in the idea of, "Oh, this guy's a billionaire. He's got a lot of money. They could do so much good with that money." But the people who approach Bernie with the right frame of mind will say, "Look at what that man accomplished, and I need his brain and his, not just his financial resources, but I need all of his capacity to bear on this social problem." And that's world changing.
Because that's just as valuable as the actual dollar bills.
100%. Yes.
It's unreal, man, when you run across people that are that special, and we've had plenty of them in the United States of America, and Bernie is certainly one of those people that they made a difference. Deeply committed to helping veterans, especially with the hidden wounds of war. Mm-hmm. You're a combat veteran, somebody spent time researching the best practices. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, that's how we started. We first I learned Bernie in the foundation in Home Depot, and then he said, "Now take that blueprint and apply that to my life, that of my comrades." And Bernie, there's never been a budget. Bernie didn't say, "I'm going to spend X number of dollars in this area." He said, "Go out and find it, and if it's worth doing, we're gonna do it." And so we started making grants initially. We went very broad. I would say we were a mile wide and an inch deep on our veteran strategy. We funded things from housing, care for the wounded, to supporting caregivers, to education, employment, transition support, all and everything in between. Bernie got his start with the Shepherd Center and the SHARE program, which I think y'all are probably familiar with here locally. That's what really got Bernie's passion going. It's what ignited him toward wanting to support veterans. And so that was always kind of at the core. Bernie said, "What we did at SHARE is great, but we're only seeing, at that time, 50, 60 patients a year. There's hundreds of thousands of veterans that need this care. How can we have a bigger impact?" So we went broad, and after a few years of having some success, having some grants that didn't work, really learning how we ought to approach things, I went to Bernie and said, "I think we need to go narrow and deep. I think we need to focus on one problem and bring all of our resources to that. And really, that means stop doing the things on the margin and go deep here." And he said, "Absolutely, we've got to go deep." And so that was invisible wounds. Specifically, it was traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, depression, often caused by post-traumatic stress, and substance abuse and addiction. When you break out, we got a lot of data from the CDC and others, when you break out the veteran suicide epidemic and you actually boil down what are the leading causes of that epidemic, 20 plus veterans taking their own lives every day, those are the three issues that come to the top. And when you look at the landscape, there's a lot of people doing mental health. I would argue that traditional mental health is not working for our veterans. Look no further than the VA to see those results. And so we wanted a new approach on mental health, and we wanted to go deep on brain injury because nobody outside of government was really looking innovatively at how to approach brain injury. So that's really what built ultimately what is today called the Avalon Action Alliance. In addition to that, we wanted to support the local community, and you guys are with the Warrior Alliance, and the Warrior Alliance mission. That's something that we've been on since the beginning. It started looking at vocational rehab and figuring out how to get veterans jobs. And we knew in Georgia we needed a resource that would be a single front door. If I'm a veteran and I have an issue, I need to know that I can go to one place and they're going to connect me to whatever it is I need. And so we got on board with that mission from the beginning, and we've seen that blossom and grow. We've now got 6 traumatic brain injury clinics around the country, about a dozen non-clinical programs, and a couple substance abuse partners that just do incredible work.
And do you feel like you're making an impact? What impact is the Marcus Foundation making in these efforts that you've created?
Absolutely. I mean, thousands, over 1,000 are touched by these programs annually now, just at the Avalon Action Alliance alone. But I can tell you personally, I'll tell you when it personally came home. And here's another Bernie story. I think 2018, I have a good friend, my Ranger buddy. His name was Kevin, and Kevin was having a tough time. And he called me and said, "Hey, I should have called you months ago, but I'm at the end of my rope." He'd kind of unraveled after he left service, and spent some time inpatient and really needed help. And so I said, "You're going to go to Warrior PATHH, which is our program with Avalon." And Kevin said, "I'll go, but will you go with me?" And I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to deal with my own stuff,
Yeah, right.
But I went to Bernie and I said, Bernie, this is, I got this good friend. He needs to go to the program. He asked me if I go with him, and Bernie looked at me and he goes, "You're absolutely going." He's like, "You're probably all screwed up and you don't even know it, Marcus." So, again, Bernie, somewhat in his wisdom, seeing around corners, he was correct. I did need it, and so I sat through a program personally. I went to Warrior PATHH as a participant. And I thought, I'll go and listen, and I know what this is about. But it wasn't more than a few hours on the grounds in Arizona before I was realizing that I needed to open my box and let some of my stuff out and get the tools that they had to offer. And for me, it was preventative. I never was going off the cliff, but I could have been just as easy as anybody else. So I've now sent dozen or more of my close comrades, my buddies that I served with, to these programs. So I know they work. They affected me personally, and they've been changing and saving lives of my friends.
It's unbelievable, man. I just love hearing that.
Amazing stuff. It's great what y'all are doing at the Marcus Foundation. And if you're just tuning in, we are talking with Army veteran Marcus Ruzek, Senior Program Director at the Marcus Foundation. You can get in touch with him at marcusfoundation.org. That's marcusfoundation.org, or link to him like you can link to all of our guests through the warrioralliance.org. And a bit more background, amazing stuff that you did in the service. While serving as an infantry officer in 2009, Captain Ruzek, you deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and later as part of the 1st Special Forces Regiment, the Green Berets. You earned 3 Bronze Stars during a 2015 deployment to northern Iraq, where you led Special Forces A-Team, partnered with Kurdish forces in the fight against ISIS, and we greatly appreciate that, man. That is so important. Thank you for doing that for our country. How have you taken all of that frontline experience from the battlefield and applied it to your current work, bringing Bernie's vision to life and building this community alliance across the country?
I thank you for that. Serving in the Army was my life's dream. It was all I ever really wanted to do. It's funny to look back now, but I thought that I'd always be a soldier. It's funny to say that now. When you're older, you realize it's a young man's game. But
I think you're a citizen soldier.
Yeah. I thought I'd never get out. Bottom line.
Same here. Had I not met my wife, I wouldn't have.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm with you.
Family was the definitely the differentiator for me too. In those times, what's great is the work that I get to do now is so incredibly personal, because this is our community, right? I mean, thank God that a man like Bernie Marcus cares so deeply about veterans. Bernie was a veteran. He served in the Air National Guard. A lot of people don't know that. But it was really special. At his funeral a year ago, we actually we had all the paperwork, and I was able to actually get funeral honors done and a flag folded for Bernie, and I was able to present that to his wife, Billy, at the funeral, which was really, really special and emotional. But I will tell you, after a couple weeks with Bernie, I was meeting with him, and he said, we were talking about, he was telling me about his life, and we were talking about the veteran programming. And he said, Marcus, you're a bureaucrat and you don't even know it. And I said, what do you mean?
That doesn't sound good.
I know. I said, what do you mean, Bernie? And he said, don't worry, we'll retrain you. And I was like, well, hold on. I was a Green Beret. I said, we're kind of like the entrepreneurs of the Army. It's nice. The SF mission is we kick you off the back of a C-130 with a duffel bag full of money and your team and go save the world, right?
Yeah.
And so, I explained that to him, but he said, no, you're a bureaucrat. All you've done is serve in the government. You're going to learn. Don't worry, you'll learn. And he was right, man. Little did I realize how much how much that I was entrenched in that way of thinking. But there's so many good principles that the Army taught me that completely translate over to philanthropy. Frankly, I'm surprised more people haven't made that connection, because it's entrepreneurial, it's gritty, but it's mission focused and it's purpose driven, and it's so aligned with the way that I was brought up as a young man.
Yes, sir.
How did getting that MBA at the Wharton School and double major in management and entrepreneurship, how has that shaped what you do now?
Yeah, it also, Bernie, I had no intention of going to graduate school, kind of like the Army. I didn't even want to go to college. The Army sent me to college so I could become an officer. Working for Bernie, he said, you need to get an MBA. And I said, why would I want to do that? And he said, you've done a great job here, Marcus, but you don't have business experience. I want you to get this professional education. And so he's the one that sent me to school. And I thought, hey, if we're doing it, I might as well do it, right? So I go to Wharton, and I graduated actually earlier this year in May. It was a great experience, and I learned a whole new version of the world through that educational experience that absolutely applies to the way that we look at social issues. Too few people in the nonprofit industry and in private foundations look at charity and nonprofits through a business lens. And Bernie would tell you, he used to say in our board meetings, he would say, there's something about the doorway of the nonprofit. These great business leaders, they walk through the doorway and then they lose their damn minds and they stop thinking. And he said that we don't do that here, and so that professional education has helped me just continue to grow in my abilities for the foundation.
One of the organizations that your foundation helped support from an early stage was right here in Atlanta with the actual Warrior Alliance,
right.
and you guys really helped it go. The CEO, Scott Johnson, was telling me before the show that the Warrior Alliance would not exist without your help, that you guys really helped kick it in the rear there. So why, could you explain to our listeners why you guys did that, and why it's so critical to build a connected network of veteran service organizations, and what role does that kind of collaboration play in making the work successful?
Yeah, well, as I told y'all, when we got started, we were very broad. So we were looking across the spectrum of veteran needs. And just here in Georgia is where we started. And we started looking around, and there are organizations doing great things across the state, all disparate, somewhat in their silos, not coordinated or working together. There are a few exceptions. There were some organizations absolutely that were partnered and headed in the right direction together, but in general there wasn't momentum, and there wasn't a focused effort. And so what we saw was a lot of great things happening, but there needed to be connective tissue. That, if I'm a veteran and I reach out to an employment organization, but I also need some mental health care, I need that organization or somebody in between to know where to help me and to be able to tease that out and send me to the right place. And so we saw that need. We started talking with Scott and the Warrior Alliance as they had a vision for something similar. And we were like, what would it look like? What would it look like to invest in the infrastructure needed to build this thing from the ground? And so we did. Entrepreneurially, we kind of said, Scott, you're a leader. Let's go after it. And then we brought in the rest of the community. We leveraged a couple of other networks like Vetlanta that had started around the same time, and we said, "Hey guys, let's take care of veterans together. We're all on the same team here." And so what they've been able to accomplish in being that connective tissue, single front door, clearinghouse, whatever you want to call it, the Warrior Alliance has done an incredible job, and we hope they continue to do it.
What about a veteran listening right now that is dealing with some of that stuff and they don't know where to turn?
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
I mean, first of all, turn to your buddies. The more still, Avalon seeing thousands of patients through Shepherd Center here in Atlanta, same thing. The Warrior PATHH program. The number one referral source is still word of mouth. It's still the veteran who went through the program who told their buddy. So number one, reach out and talk to a friend. If you can't get a straight answer, and you're bold enough, then reach out to an organization like the Warrior Alliance and find out who you need to get connected to. Bottom line, it doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter if you were a tier 1 operator, if you served on a ship, if you were in the cook line. If you're a veteran, you served our country. 1%, less than 1% of this nation's population sustained over 20 years of combat. That's the longest military conflict in our nation's history. not everybody needs help, but some folks do. And when you recognize that you do, it's time to step up and do it. And here's the reason why. We don't do this out of pity. We don't do it because we view veterans as broken. We need veterans to be well so that they can be the same productive members of society that they were on the battlefield, and so that we can leverage their leadership and their experience. And Bernie was staunch about this. We will not throw a pity party for our veterans.
Love that.
We will ensure that they're ready to keep serving because we need them.
God, man, I love that. Dudes have me ready to run through a brick wall, man, just by saying that part.
Yeah.
And it's so true. But we just can't thank you enough for coming in today and sharing, those stories about Bernie. What in the world? Cut there. Sharing those stories about Bernie and the things that you've been a part of, and I hope it won't be the last time you'll come up, man, because there's I bet, Scott, there's 10,000 more questions that we could ask.
You got to come back and bring some of your success stories or any of it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you one last question. Sure. I see on your wrist there a very special. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm sorry, I wear a memorial band like a lot of guys do. Names of several of my friends who were killed in combat. We didn't get to bring everybody home. And so from 2009, that's Staff Sergeant Alex French, which was in my infantry platoon. One of the best NCOs I ever got to work with. Gave his last full measure in 2009. I also served with Ryan Sarter, Master Sergeant Wheeler. These are guys that just gave it all. And then there's two names on here: John Fisher, who was a teammate of mine, and Sergeant Major Corey Moore, who are both dear friends that I served with, and they took their lives after service. And that's the reality of the issues that we face. It makes some sense that a soldier would go to war and not come home. Like, I was prepared for that mentally, but for them to survive that multiple trips and then come home and decide that they're ready to cash their chips in, I can't square that in my mind. It's the same problem that Bernie and I together said, we can't allow this to continue to happen. And so I need to see them every day. That's why I wear it, because it drives me forward. And I need to remember the freedom that I get to enjoy here in this country and ensure that the importance of the work that we do continues.
You're doing God's work, man.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you very much.
You are.
Appreciate it.
Man, you are. God bless you, man.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you.